Welcome to this fourth part of this learning unit on user management. In this part, we will go deeper into aspects of identity and access management, IAM, and more specifically, we'll focus on access management. Access management is a fundamental concept in IT governance. It refers to the processes, policies, and technologies used to control who can access information, systems, and resources within an organization, and under what conditions. In addition to assigning digital identities and authentication methods, IT administrators need a way to grant access rights and privileges to each entity. The best practice in access management today is the principle of least privilege, in which each entity or application is granted access rights to only the resources necessary to complete a task or perform work, and only for the shortest time necessary. Privileged access is reserved for users such as administrators or DevOps staff who manage or make changes to applications, databases, systems, or servers. The credentials that grant such access are therefore considered critical access credentials within the organization, since any failure in securing these access credentials could have severe consequences for the organization. PAM stands for Privileged Access Management, and PAM solutions isolate these accounts and monitor their activity to prevent credential theft or misuse of privileges. Role-based access control, or RBAC, is a method to control what users can do within an organization's IT systems. To the same, RBAC is based on assigning each user one or more roles and granting each role different permissions. RBAC can be applied to a single software application or to multiple applications. Now, let's look at some of the elements of RBAC. Authorization is the permission given to a user or role to perform a class of actions that require additional rights. Privilege is a well-defined right that can be granted to a command, user, role, or system. Privileges allow a process to succeed. Ordinary users have basic privileges. A security attribute is what allows a process to perform an operation. In a typical Unix environment, a security attribute allows a process to perform an operation that is otherwise prohibited to ordinary users. The next element of RBAC that we will look at, the rights profile, is a collection of administrative capabilities that can be assigned to a role or user. A rights profile can consist of authorizations, commands with security attributes, and other rights profiles. Rights profiles provide a convenient way to group security attributes. On the other hand, a role is a logical grouping of access permissions that represent a specific job function or responsibility, used to control what users can do within systems. In a system that manages access by roles, super-user capabilities can be distributed across different roles. For example, in a two-role system, security tasks would be managed by one security role. The second role would handle system administration tasks that are not security-related. Roles can be more specific. For example, a system could include separate administrative roles to manage the cryptographic structure, printers, system time, file systems, and auditing. Among the main benefits of RBAC are flexibility. Changes to the organizational structure or authorizations can be made quickly. Reduced administrative burden. RBAC allows to quickly add and change roles and deploy them globally across all operating systems, platforms, and applications. Additionally, it reduces the chance of error when assigning user permissions. Efficiency. Thanks to the improvement in administration, the process is more efficient and can be automated, reducing waiting times. Security. RBAC increases security to the principle of least privilege by assigning the fewest access permissions to a user based on their roles. The role defines the set of permissions the user needs to perform the business tasks associated with their job function. Following this approach, RBAC helps achieve Zero Trust security, which is a modern security concept based on the principle of never trust, always verify. Here we have the final benefits of RBAC. Separation of duties. Because roles are separated, in theory, no individual user can cause a significant breach, as a hacker would be limited to the resources that the compromised account was allowed to access. Transparency. Being role-based, administration is simplified and it is easier to understand the applied policy. Enhanced compliance. Airbag helps organizations meet the compliance standards for data protection and privacy, as well as the legal requirements imposed by regional and local government bodies. This is possible as IT departments and executives can manage data access permissions based on user roles. Mind you, while there are lots of benefits to using Airbag, there are also some disadvantages. One is the preparation work required. It takes a lot of work to build an access control model that closely matches an organization structure in order for it to operate effectively. For small organizations, it might be just more straightforward to assign individual permissions rather than map everything to roles. The first thing you have to do when implementing an Airbag mechanism is to determine what functions are going to be performed in each position or department. Then, based on this, you must identify the tools and or resources that are needed to carry out these functions. Secondly, you need to assign roles to users, taking into account the tasks or position that each user has in the organization. It is important to bear in mind here that each user can be assigned more than one role, and that role privileges can be combined with individual privilege assignment. Then you need to identify the scope to which the access management is to be applied. This normally means data rights. Does the role need read access, read and write access, deletion access, or full access? Application access rights. Which apps can users with this role run? Authorization of request. How will you change role permissions? There are several different models for Airbag. Here are the most popular. Flat Airbag is the basic model. Users are assigned roles. Roles are assigned privileges, and privileges grant permissions. Users can take on more than one role, and one role can be held by many users. Hierarchical Airbag imposes a hierarchy of roles. The definition of hierarchies is left open, allowing each organization to define its own. Restricted Airbag takes into account the separation of functions. This aims to minimize the possibility of users committing fraudulent acts using their roles. With restricted Airbag, certain accesses and actions require the permissions of more than one role. This means you need to involve more than one user or employee to complete a task, such as both the engineering and finance departments to create a new product, for example. Symmetrical Airbag implies that the roles and permissions relating to each function can be reviewed and adjusted periodically in order to effectively adapt to changes and enforce the principle of least privilege. Here we have an example of an Airbag implementation applied to an end-run. First we define roles. This is a typical list for end-runs. Then the roles are assigned to specific permissions in line with their responsibilities. Note that account managers can access Unix or the corporate network, but to be fair, software developers can't access Salesforce or the customer database. Permissions can be defined in a more granular way, specifying the type of access to the resource, such as read-only or read and write access types, but this is a simple example. Now that we have defined both roles and permissions, users can be assigned to roles. Note that we have two account managers, but only one senior IT sysadmin. Seems a little lopsided to me. Perhaps she could be assigned a junior sysadmin to take over some of her less urgent tasks? With this last example, we have reached the end of this part on access management. I hope you have enjoyed it. Let's go on to the next part, where we will talk about directory services.